created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and empty, and darkness covered the deep waters. But the Spirit of God was there, moving over the surface of the waters. Then God said,
"Let there be light."
And there was light. God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness, calling the light day and the darkness night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. And God said,
"Let there be a vault between the waters to separate water from water."
And so, God made the sky, separating the waters above from the waters below. He called the vault heaven. And there was evening, and there was morning, the second day. Then God said,
"Let the waters under the heavens be gathered together, and let dry ground appear."
And it was so. God called the dry ground land, and the water seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God commanded the earth to bring forth plants, trees, and vegetation, and it was so. The earth flourished with life, and there was evening, and there was morning, the third day. And God said,
"Let there be lights in the heavens to separate day from night, and let them serve as signs to mark seasons, days, and years."
God made two great lights, the sun to govern the day and the moon to govern the night. He also made the stars and set them in the sky to give light to the earth. And there was evening, and there was morning, the fourth day. Then God said,
"Let the waters teem with living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the vault of the sky."
So God created the great sea creatures and every kind of living thing that moves in the water, and every kind of bird. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the fifth day. And God said,
"Let the earth bring forth living creatures of every kind, livestock, wild animals, and creatures that crawl on the ground."
And God saw that it was good. Then God said,
"Let us make mankind in our image, to rule over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, the animals, and the whole earth."
And so God created humanity in his own image, both male and female, and blessed them. On the seventh day, God finished the work he had been doing, and he rested from all his work. And God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, for on it he rested from all the work of creation.
Thank you for watching. What did you learn from this story? Let's know in the comment section. Please subscribe, like and share.
Cain and Abel were the first two sons of Adam and Eve after they were sent out of the Garden of Eden. Cain, the older brother, worked as a farmer, tilling the soil and growing crops. Abel, the younger brother, became a shepherd, caring for the animals and raising flocks. As they grew, both decided to bring an offering to God to honor him. Abel chose the firstborn lambs from his flock, giving the very best he had as an offering to the Lord. Abel's gift showed a heart full of faith and reverence, seeking to please God. Cain also brought an offering from the fruits of the land he had harvested, but his offering did not carry the same devotion and purity of heart. The Bible tells us that the Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering, he did not look with favor. Seeing that God accepted Abel's sacrifice but not his own, Cain became extremely angry and his face fell with disappointment and resentment. God, knowing the thoughts of Cain's heart, spoke to him directly.
"Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, Will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it.
God's words were both a warning and an encouragement, showing Cain that he still had the chance to do what was right and to rule over the sinful desire that threatened to take control of him. Despite God's warning, Cain allowed jealousy and bitterness to grow in his heart. He felt rejected and was consumed with anger toward his brother. Instead of overcoming his feelings, he let them fester and boil within him, unable to move past the perceived unfairness. Cain's emotions turned dark, and the bond between him and Abel began to fade, poisoned by resentment. Cain then approached Abel, asking him to go with him to the field, a place away from others. Abel, unaware of his brother's intentions, followed him. In the open field, where there was no one to intervene, Cain attacked Abel in a fit of anger and envy, striking him down and killing him. Abel's blood spilled onto the ground, marking the first death in human history, a tragic loss and the first murder, one brother betraying another. After the act, Cain felt a weight of guilt but tried to hide what he had done. Yet God, who sees all things, knew exactly what had happened and came to Cain with a question.
Where's your brother Abel?
This was not because God did not know, but because he was giving Cain the opportunity to confess and take responsibility for his actions. But Cain, still trying to hide his guilt, replied defiantly,
I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper?
But God responded to him in sorrow and justice. Symbolic of the innocent life taken by Cain, became a witness against him. God's voice was heavy with the pain of the betrayal and the loss of life. Because of his sin, God placed a curse on Cain as punishment.
Now you are under a curse and driven from the ground, which opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it will no longer yield its crops for you. You will be a restless wanderer on the earth. The land, which had once provided for him, would now reject him as he had rejected his brother. Cain would no longer find a home or harvest.
In despair and fear, Cain cried out to God, saying,
My punishment is more than I can bear. Today you are driving me from the land, and I will be hidden from your presence. I will be a restless wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me.
Cain's heart was overwhelmed, fearing he would be forever cast out and hunted down by others who might seek vengeance for Abel's death. But even in judgment, God showed mercy.
Not so,
said the Lord.
Anyone who kills Cain will suffer vengeance 7 times over.
Then the Lord put a mark on Cain, so that no one who found him would kill him. The mark was a sign of God's mercy, a protection for Cain despite the weight of his sin. Though he would live in exile, God's mark ensured he would not suffer death at the hands of others. Cain left the presence of the Lord and went to live in the land of Nod, east of Eden. His separation from God and his family marked the tragic consequences of his choices. He became a wanderer, a man burdened with his actions, carrying both the mark of his sin and the reminder of God's mercy. As Cain settled in Nod, he began to build a family and a city, trying to carve out a life despite his exile. But he would always bear the weight of his past, the first to show humanity the true cost of jealousy, anger, and sin. Cain's story echoes through the generations as a warning about the dangers of letting anger and jealousy take root, as well as a reminder of God's justice and mercy, even in the face of great sin.
Thank you for watching. What did you learn from this story? Let's know in the comment section. Please subscribe, like and share.
Long ago, in the dawn of human civilization, every person on Earth spoke a single, shared language. Words flowed freely from one person to another, uniting people across regions, binding them together in purpose and understanding. They were like one great family, united in heart and mind. As they traveled, they found a vast and fertile land in Shinar, perfect for gathering together and settling as one community. The people were inspired by their unity, feeling the power and possibility that came with a shared purpose. In Shinar, they began to dream big dreams, envisioning what they could accomplish together. And so, one day, the leaders gathered the people and proclaimed an ambitious vision. Let us build a city here, with a tower that reaches the heavens. It will be a monument of our unity, a place where everyone will remember what we have achieved together. If we can build this, we will become known far and wide, and nothing will ever divide us. Their hearts raced with excitement as they shared in this dream. This city, this tower, it would be a testament to their strength, a legacy that would stand for generations to come. With determination in their hearts, the people began working. Stone was not enough for their vision. They wanted something even stronger and more resilient. So, they learned to make bricks from the rich clay of Shinar, molding and baking them in the sun until they were solid and firm. They used tar as mortar to seal each brick tightly, crafting materials that could withstand time and the elements. The foundation of the city took shape, and in the center, the base of the tower began to rise. The first few levels were small and easy, but soon the tower grew taller and taller. Workers climbed ladders, hoisting bricks higher and higher, laying them with precision and care. They constructed ramps and scaffolding, pushing their work upward, one brick at a time, as the tower reached toward the sky. With each layer added, the people felt more and more proud of what they were achieving. This was no ordinary building. It was a monument to their dreams, their unity, and the great things they could accomplish together. Days turned to weeks, and weeks turned to months. The tower climbed ever higher, a marvel that could be seen for miles across the plains of Shinar. As they looked upon their towering creation, the people marveled, proud of their work. To them, it felt like the heavens were just within their reach. Each person, from the youngest child to the oldest elder, felt part of something extraordinary, something grand and almost divine. With every stone, they felt stronger, united, and certain that nothing in the world could stand in their way. The tower had become a symbol of their ambition, a sign of the strength that came from their unity. They imagined a future where they would rule, where nothing could separate them, where they would never be forgotten. But in the midst of their pride and ambition, the Lord looked down from heaven upon the city and the tower that the people were building. He saw their remarkable progress, but he also saw something troubling within their hearts. This tower was more than just a building. It was a symbol of their growing pride, their belief that they could achieve greatness on their own, without the need for humility or reverence. And so, the Lord spoke, saying,
If, as one people speaking the same language, they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan will be beyond their reach. They have forgotten who they are and the balance that I created. Let us go down and confuse their language, so they will not understand each other.
The Lord's words were spoken with sorrow but also wisdom, for he knew that unchecked pride and ambition could lead humanity down a dangerous path. In an instant, everything changed. The workers, who had once called to each other in perfect harmony, now found themselves speaking in unfamiliar tongues. A builder called for more bricks, but the words came out in a language his neighbor couldn't understand. Another tried to shout instructions, but his voice was met with confused stares. Commands were misheard, plans misunderstood. Where once there had been unity, now there was only chaos and frustration. Teams that had worked side by side grew frustrated with one another, their words turning into angry gestures and arguments. Accidents happened, bricks fell, and scaffolding was abandoned as the people grew confused and overwhelmed. The once bustling worksite became a place of noise and disorder. Workers dropped their tools, unable to cooperate, unable to continue. Eventually, the people gave up. They could no longer understand one another, and without that unity, their great dream crumbled. The Grand Tower, their monument to reach the heavens, was left unfinished, abandoned, and silent. Their unity was broken, and so, with heavy hearts, they began to leave Shinar. Small groups formed, each speaking a different language. Families and clans split off, wandering in different directions, seeking new lands where they could start over. They no longer shared a common tongue, no longer shared a single purpose. Divided by language, they began to settle in different regions, forming the early nations that would spread across the earth. The people looked back at the tower they had tried to build, a towering ruin standing alone in the plains of Shinar. Their pride had led them to believe they could reach the heavens, that they could become like gods, but now they saw how far they had fallen from that dream. The once glorious tower stood as a testament, not of their success, but of their division and the limits of human pride. From that day on, the place was called Babel, meaning confusion, for it was there that the Lord had divided their language and scattered them across the earth. Though separated by language and distance, the story of Babel would be remembered across generations as a reminder of the importance of humility, the beauty of unity, and the risks of pride. And so, humanity spread across the world, each group carrying with it a different language, a different culture, and the memory of a tower that nearly touched the heavens, an unfinished monument to both their ambition and the limits of their pride.
Thank you for watching. What did you learn from this story? Let's know in the comment section. Please subscribe, like and share.
In a world consumed by violence and sin, humanity had forgotten its creator. Darkness had fallen over the earth, and wickedness filled the hearts of men. God looked down with sorrow, for his creation had turned away from him. And so, he declared, "I will wipe from the face of the earth the human race I have created, for the earth is filled with violence because of them." But there was one man, righteous in his generation, Noah, who walked faithfully with God. And the Lord said to Noah, "Build an ark of gopher wood. Make it large, for I will bring a flood to destroy all life under the heavens. But with you, I will establish my covenant. You and your family shall enter the ark, along with 2 of every kind of living creature." Noah listened and obeyed, trusting in the word of the Lord. For many years, Noah and his sons labored to build the ark, a massive vessel to withstand the coming storm. With each plank of wood and every stroke of a hammer, they worked diligently, guided by the divine plan. And as the ark took shape, animals from across the earth began to gather, drawn by an unseen call. 2 by 2, they came, for they too would find refuge within the ark. And so it was that the animals of the earth came to Noah, 2 by 2, male and female, of every kind, birds of the air, beasts of the land, and creatures that crawl on the ground. They entered the ark, finding shelter in its mighty walls, for the time of the flood was near. The day came when Noah, his wife, his sons, and their wives entered the ark. The great door stood open, waiting. As the first drops of rain began to fall, the Lord sealed the door himself, shutting Noah and his family inside, safe from the storm that was about to engulf the earth. And then, the fountains of the deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were opened. For 40 days and 40 nights, the rain fell. The waters rose high above the earth, covering mountains and hills. Everything that lived and moved on the earth perished in the flood. But the ark floated safely upon the waters, carrying with it the promise of new life. For many days, the ark drifted across the endless waters. The storm had passed, but the earth was still submerged. Inside the ark, Noah and his family waited patiently, caring for the animals and trusting in God's promise. Outside, the world was quiet as the floodwaters slowly began to recede. After 40 days, Noah opened a window and sent out a dove to search for dry land. The first time, it returned with nothing. But on the second journey, the dove returned with an olive branch in its beak. And Noah knew that the waters had receded, and life was beginning anew. Finally, God commanded Noah to leave the ark. The doors opened, and Noah, his family, and the animals stepped onto dry land. And there, God spoke to Noah once more, saying, "I establish my covenant with you. Never again will there be a flood to destroy the earth. I set my rainbow in the clouds as a sign of this everlasting covenant between me and all living creatures." And Noah built an altar to the Lord, giving thanks for his mercy and faithfulness.
Thank you for watching. What did you learn from this story? Let's know in the comment section. Please subscribe, like and share.
Jacob, the grandson of Abraham, was blessed with 12 sons, who would become the heads of the tribes of Israel. But of all his sons, Joseph was his father's favorite. Jacob gifted Joseph a coat of many colors, a symbol of his love, but also a reminder to his brothers that Joseph held a special place in their father's heart. Joseph was a young dreamer, and God gave him visions of his future, a future that seemed to promise leadership and authority over his family. When Joseph shared his dreams of his family bowing before him, his brother's jealousy turned to bitterness. This tension set the stage for a family rift, a betrayal that would change the course of their lives. As Joseph approached his brothers in the field, he was filled with hope, unaware of their growing resentment. But their bitterness had turned to hatred, and they seized him, ripping off his coat of many colors, a symbol of his father's love. Driven by jealousy, they cast him into an empty pit. Joseph's cries echoed, but their hearts were hardened. Soon, a caravan of traders appeared in the distance, and in a moment of cruel opportunity, the brothers sold him as a slave, sending Joseph on a journey far from his family and all he had known. They watched as he was taken away, feeling relieved yet haunted by what they had done. Meanwhile, Joseph looked back, heartbroken and afraid, wondering if he'd ever return home. Brought to Egypt as a slave, Joseph was sold to Potiphar, a captain of Pharaoh's guard. But despite the harsh circumstances, Joseph remained faithful and diligent, trusting that God was with him. Day by day, he worked in Potiphar's house with integrity, proving himself trustworthy. His hard work and loyalty did not go unnoticed. Potiphar saw Joseph's gift for management and placed him in charge of his entire household. Through God's blessing, everything Joseph touched prospered. Though he was far from home and still a servant, Joseph's rise in Potiphar's house offered a glimmer of hope and purpose. But adversity returned in the form of false accusation. Potiphar's wife, drawn to Joseph, tried to deceive him, yet Joseph's integrity kept him from betrayal. Rejected and angry, she accused him falsely, and despite his innocence, Potiphar believed her. Joseph was thrown into prison, a dark place where he had every reason to despair. Yet, Joseph's faith remained steadfast. In the quiet solitude of his cell, he continued to trust in God's plan. And even there, the Lord was with him. Soon, he found favor with the prison warden, who placed Joseph in charge of other prisoners. Though he was surrounded by walls and shadows, Joseph's light continued to shine. While in prison, Joseph encountered two of Pharaoh's servants, the cupbearer and the baker, each troubled by mysterious dreams. Seeing their distress, Joseph asked them about their dreams, offering a listening ear and a compassionate heart. With God's help, Joseph interpreted their dreams accurately. To the cupbearer, he gave hope, foretelling his return to Pharaoh's service. To the baker, he spoke truth, revealing that his life would soon end. Joseph asked the cupbearer to remember him upon release, hoping this act of kindness might lead to his own freedom. Yet even as the days passed with no word, Joseph remained faithful, trusting that God's timing was perfect. 2 years later, Pharaoh was troubled by dreams that no one could interpret. He dreamed of 7 fat cows devoured by 7 lean ones, and 7 full heads of grain consumed by 7 withered heads. No wise man or magician could explain it. Then, the cupbearer remembered Joseph and told Pharaoh of his gift for interpreting dreams. Joseph was summoned from the prison, and standing before Pharaoh, he acknowledged that only God could provide the answer. Through Joseph, God revealed the meaning of Pharaoh's dreams. 7 years of abundance would be followed by 7 years of famine. Seeing Joseph's wisdom, Pharaoh appointed him as governor of Egypt, entrusting him with the task of saving the land. In one day, Joseph went from prisoner to ruler, fulfilling the destiny he once saw in his dreams. Through Joseph, Egypt became a place of refuge, and his leadership brought hope in a time of despair. God's favor was upon him, and Joseph felt the weight of his position, yet also the purpose behind his journey. All his trials and suffering had led to this moment of redemption and service. In the midst of the famine, Jacob sent his sons to Egypt to buy grain, not knowing that the man they would face was their brother Joseph. When his brothers arrived, they bowed before him, just as he had once dreamed. But they did not recognize him, dressed as he was in Egyptian robes and authority. Joseph's heart was torn, for these were the men who had betrayed him, yet they were also his family. Hiding his identity, he tested them to see if their hearts had changed. He accused them of being spies, watching their reactions. And as they spoke of their regret and pain, Joseph saw that time and hardship had softened their spirits. Overcome with emotion, Joseph could no longer hide his identity. He ordered everyone else from the room, then spoke to his brothers in their own language, his voice trembling with emotion.
"I'm Joseph, your brother,"
he said. They were stunned, fear gripping their hearts as they remembered their betrayal. But Joseph reassured them, saying,
"Do not be afraid. What you intended for harm, God intended for good, to save many lives."
His words were filled with forgiveness and love. In that moment, Joseph chose compassion over revenge, seeing his suffering as part of God's greater plan. News of Joseph's family reached Pharaoh, who invited Jacob and his sons to settle in Egypt. And so, Joseph was reunited with his father, Jacob, who had believed him lost forever. The family embraced, tears of joy and relief marking their reunion. In Egypt, Joseph provided them with a place to live, sheltering them from the famine. Through forgiveness and reconciliation, Joseph restored his family, fulfilling the purpose for which God had prepared him. His journey, from favored son to slave to ruler, had come full circle. And in his story, God's faithfulness was revealed, a story of redemption that would inspire generations.
Thank you for watching. What did you learn from this story? Let's know in the comment section. Please subscribe, like and share.
In ancient Israel, the people were suffering under the harsh rule of the Philistines, who were a powerful and cruel enemy. The Israelites had no peace, and their lives were filled with fear and oppression. During this dark time, something incredible happened. A message of hope was sent from God. Manoah's wife, a woman who had been unable to have children for many years, received a visit from an angel. The angel appeared to her as a bright and shining figure, and when she saw him, she was both amazed and frightened. The angel spoke to her with a calm and reassuring voice, telling her,
"You are barren and childless, but you are going to become pregnant and give birth to a son. Now see to it that you drink no wine or other fermented drink and that you do not eat anything unclean. You will become pregnant and have a son whose head is never to be touched by a razor, because the boy is to be a Nazirite, dedicated to God from the womb. He will take the lead in delivering Israel from the hands of the Philistines."
As the years passed, the child was born, and they named him Samson. He grew, and the Spirit of the Lord stirred within him. He was marked by a strength unlike any other, a strength that would set him apart for the great work God had planned. When Samson came of age, he went down to Timnah, where he saw a woman who caught his eye. She was a Philistine, and though his parents were troubled by this, Samson insisted that she be the one he married. "Get her for me," he told them, "for she pleases me." His parents, though reluctant, did as he asked. They did not understand that the Lord was using this desire to begin a work against the Philistines. On the way to Timnah, Samson encountered a lion. The beast attacked him, but Samson, filled with the Spirit of the Lord, tore it apart with his bare hands, as easily as a young goat. He did not tell anyone of what had happened, not even his parents. As Samson prepared for his wedding, he presented a riddle to the Philistines at the feast.
"Out of the eater, something to eat; out of the strong, something sweet."
He promised a reward to anyone who could solve it, but after 3 days, they could not. They turned to Samson's bride-to-be, pressing her to find out the answer. Reluctantly, she betrayed Samson's secret, and he was furious when he found out. In a rage, Samson went to Ashkelon, killed 30 men, and took their clothes to settle the wager. His marriage was shattered, and his bitterness toward the Philistines deepened. Soon after, Samson's anger led him to another act of vengeance. He caught 300 foxes, tied their tails together in pairs, and set torches to them. He released them into the fields of the Philistines, and their grain, vineyards, and olive groves were consumed by fire. In retaliation, the Philistines burned his wife and father-in-law to death. This act of violence set Samson on a path of even greater conflict with his enemies. The Philistines, now enraged, sought to capture Samson. The men of Judah, fearing the wrath of the Philistines, came to Samson and asked him why he had brought such calamity upon them. "We have come to bind you and hand you over to the Philistines," they told him. Samson agreed, but only on the condition that they did not kill him. They bound him with new ropes and brought him to the Philistine army. As they neared the Philistine camp, the Spirit of the Lord came upon Samson, and with a great burst of strength, he broke the ropes and grabbed the jawbone of a donkey. With it, he struck down 1,000 Philistine men. When the battle was over, Samson threw the jawbone away and called out, "With the jawbone of a donkey, I have slain 1,000 men." As time passed, Samson's life took another turn when he fell in love with a woman named Delilah. The Philistine lords approached her with a bribe, offering her money if she could discover the secret of Samson's strength. Delilah pressed Samson repeatedly, asking him, "Tell me the secret of your great strength, and how you can be bound and subdued." Samson, at first, gave her false answers, but she persisted. After several attempts, he finally told her the truth, "If you shave my head, I will lose my strength." Delilah, eager to betray him, waited until he fell asleep in her lap. She had his hair shaved off, and when the Philistines came to capture him, Samson was weak. He could not break free. The Philistines gouged out his eyes, and they bound him, bringing him to Gaza, where they set him to grind grain in prison. But even in his captivity, Samson's hair began to grow back, and so did the power of the Lord upon him. One day, the Philistines gathered to celebrate in the temple of their god, Dagon. They called for Samson to entertain them. They were drunken with pride and mocked him, the mighty man who had brought so much trouble to their land. Samson, now blind, stood between two pillars that supported the temple. He called to God in desperation, "Lord God, remember me. Strengthen me just once more, O God, that I may with one blow get revenge on the Philistines for my 2 eyes." God answered his prayer, and Samson pushed against the pillars with all his might. The temple shook and the structure collapsed. Samson's final act of strength destroyed the Philistine rulers and thousands of their people. In his death, Samson killed more Philistines than he had in his life. Samson's body was taken by his family and buried in the tomb of his father, Manoah, in the land of Dan. Though his life was filled with moments of pride, sin, and folly, in the end, Samson fulfilled the purpose for which God had called him, to begin the deliverance of Israel from the Philistines. Samson's life is a tale of extraordinary strength and profound weakness. It is a reminder that even in our flaws and failures, God can work His will, using the brokenness of human lives to fulfill His divine purpose.
Thank you for watching. What did you learn from this story? Let's know in the comment section. Please subscribe, like and share.
In the reign of King Darius, a servant of the living God named Daniel found favor in the kingdom of Babylon. His wisdom, integrity, and devotion to his God made him a man without equal. But as Daniel prospered, jealousy grew among the other rulers. They despised his favor with the king, and so they sought to bring him down. But they found no fault in him, except his unwavering devotion to his God. They whispered amongst themselves, saying,
"We will never find grounds to accuse Daniel unless it has something to do with the law of his God."
Their plan was simple yet cruel: use Daniel's faith against him. The conspirators approached King Darius with flattery, masking their deceitful intentions. They proposed a law, one that would stroke the king's ego but seal Daniel's fate.
O mighty king, we have a suggestion. Issue a decree that for the next 30 days, no one in your kingdom shall pray to any god or man except you. If anyone disobeys, let them be thrown into the den of lions.
It is a good idea. Such a law would bring unity to my kingdom. Let it be written and signed.
And so, the decree was signed. By the law of the Medes and Persians, it could not be altered. But in their hearts, the plotters rejoiced, for they knew Daniel's faithfulness to his God would not waver.
When Daniel learned that the decree had been signed, he faced a choice: obey the law of man or remain true to the law of his God. But to Daniel, there was no choice. He would not abandon his faith. As he had always done, Daniel knelt by the window, facing Jerusalem. His hands lifted in prayer, and his voice rose in thanksgiving. 3 times a day, Daniel prayed to the God of his ancestors, unshaken by the threat of death.
Lord, my God, I place my trust in you. Guide me and protect me, as you have always done.
When the conspirators saw Daniel praying, they said,
"There he is, just as we knew."
They had caught Daniel in the very act of defying the king's decree. Their trap had worked, and they hurried to Darius, eager to see Daniel punished. The plotters went to the king and reminded him of the law he had signed.
O king, Daniel, your favored servant, has ignored your decree. He continues to pray to his God. The punishment is clear, and the law cannot be changed.
Bound by the unchanging law of the Medes and Persians, King Darius had no choice but to send Daniel to his death. And the king said to Daniel,
"May your God, whom you serve, continually rescue you, Daniel."
The king returned to his palace, but sleep escaped him, and his heart was heavy with sorrow. Daniel was brought to the lion's den, a pit of darkness filled with the roars of ravenous beasts. The stone at the entrance was rolled away, and Daniel, calm and full of faith, was lowered into the pit. In the den, Daniel remained unharmed, for the Lord had sent his angel to shut the mouths of the lions.
He prayed,
O God of my fathers, you are faithful. You deliver your servant.
At first light, the king hurried to the den, his heart pounding with hope and fear.
Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions?
For a moment, there was only silence. Then, from the depths of the den, came a voice.
O king, live forever. My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. I am unharmed.
The king's heart soared with joy. Daniel was alive. Quickly, he ordered the stone to be rolled away, and Daniel was lifted from the den. There was not a single wound on him. God had protected his faithful servant. The conspirators who plotted against Daniel were thrown into the den, and they did not escape the lion's wrath. King Darius issued a new decree that all in his kingdom must fear and reverence the God of Daniel.
For he is the living God, enduring forever. His kingdom shall never be destroyed.
Thank you for watching. What did you learn from this story? Let's know in the comment section. Please subscribe, like and share.
Long ago, in the powerful kingdom of Egypt, the Israelites were forced to live as slaves. Day after day, they toiled under the hot sun, building Pharaoh's cities, lifting heavy stones, and working in fields, all while being watched closely by Egyptian guards. Their lives were filled with hardship, but even in these difficult times, the Israelite families grew in number. Pharaoh, the ruler of Egypt, became afraid. He saw the Israelites' strength and worried that one day they might rise up against him. In his fear, he gave a harsh and terrible order. Every newborn Hebrew baby boy was to be thrown into the Nile River. Pharaoh thought that by doing this, he could weaken the Israelites and control them. This decree brought sadness and fear to every Hebrew family. But among these families was a woman named Jochebed. She and her husband, Amram, already had 2 children, a young girl named Miriam and a boy named Aaron. One day, Jochebed gave birth to another baby, a beautiful little boy. As soon as she held him in her arms, she felt an overwhelming love and knew she had to protect him, no matter what it took. Jochebed managed to hide her baby for 3 months, keeping him safe and silent from the eyes of the Egyptian guards. Every time she heard footsteps outside her home, her heart raced, worried they might discover her son. But babies grow, and as the days passed, it became harder and harder to keep him hidden. The baby's cries grew louder, and Jochebed realized that she could not keep him a secret much longer. Desperate and determined, Jochebed came up with a courageous plan. She decided to entrust her baby to the river itself. Carefully, she wove a small basket out of reeds. She coated the basket with tar and pitch so that it would float and not let water seep in. Then, with a heavy heart and a prayer, she placed her beloved son inside the basket. Holding her breath, she set the basket gently among the reeds along the banks of the Nile River, hoping that somehow he would be saved. Nearby, Miriam, the baby's big sister, watched with wide eyes. She didn't want to leave her baby brother alone, so she decided to stay hidden by the riverbank, watching over him from a distance. She felt anxious and hopeful at the same time, wondering what would happen to him. As the basket drifted slowly down the river, something extraordinary happened. Pharaoh's daughter, a princess, came to the river to bathe. She was surrounded by her maidservants, who noticed the unusual basket floating among the reeds. Curiosity piqued, the princess asked her maidservants to bring the basket to her. When the princess opened the basket, she was taken aback. Inside was a tiny baby boy, looking up at her with innocent eyes. Just then, the baby let out a soft cry. Pharaoh's daughter felt a rush of compassion and tenderness fill her heart. She could tell he was a Hebrew baby, one of the children her father had ordered to be cast into the river, yet she couldn't bear to let anything happen to him. At that very moment, Miriam, who had been watching everything, summoned her courage and stepped forward. Bowing respectfully, she asked the princess,
"Would you like me to find a Hebrew woman to nurse the child for you?"
Pharaoh's daughter, touched by the girl's bravery and quick thinking, smiled and agreed. With a racing heart, Miriam ran back home and told her mother the wonderful news. Jochebed could hardly believe it. She would be able to care for her son again, even if only for a short time. And so, Jochebed returned to the river with Miriam and met with Pharaoh's daughter, who entrusted the baby to her.
The princess said,
"Take this child and nurse him for me, and I will pay you."
Jochebed took her son home, her heart filled with joy and gratitude. She was able to love and care for him openly, at least for a little while longer. As the child grew, she whispered stories to him, stories of his people and of their faith in God. When the boy was old enough, Jochebed brought him back to Pharaoh's daughter, who adopted him as her own son. She named him Moses, which means drawn out, because she had drawn him out of the water. Moses grew up in Pharaoh's palace, surrounded by wealth and education. Yet he never forgot his roots or the bravery and love of his family. Years later, Moses would grow into a strong, wise man, and he would remember the hardships of his people, the Israelites. The memory of his mother's courage, his sister's bravery, and the kindness of Pharaoh's daughter would stay with him. He would one day become a great leader, chosen by God to deliver the Israelites from slavery, guiding them toward freedom. And it all began with a mother's love, a sister's watchful eye, and a princess's compassion.
Thank you for watching. What did you learn from this story? Let's know in the comment section. Please subscribe, like and share.
Once upon a time, in a land called Israel, there was a young shepherd named David. He was brave, kind, and loved taking care of his sheep. But one day, trouble came to the valley. The Philistines, a powerful enemy, marched into the land with their fierce leader, Goliath. Goliath was no ordinary man. He stood over 9 feet tall. His armor gleamed in the sunlight, and his voice boomed like thunder as he shouted challenges to the Israelite army.
Send me a champion to fight. And if he wins, we will serve you. But if I win, you will serve us.
Every morning and evening, Goliath called out, taunting the Israelites and instilling fear in their hearts. The soldiers were terrified, and no one dared to accept his challenge. Meanwhile, David was at home, happily tending his sheep. He loved his job and felt proud of being a shepherd. But one day, his father, Jesse, called him and said, "David, I need you to take some food to your brothers at the battlefield. They are fighting against the Philistines." David eagerly agreed, excited to see his brothers and learn more about the battle. He packed bread and cheese, then set off toward the battlefield, whistling a cheerful tune along the way. When David arrived at the battlefield, he was shocked to see the fear on the faces of the Israelite soldiers. They looked worn and defeated. As he made his way through the camp, he finally spotted his brothers. "What's happening?" David asked, concerned. His brothers sighed. "It's Goliath," said Eliab, his oldest brother. "No one is brave enough to fight him. He challenges us every day, and each time, we grow more afraid." David couldn't believe what he was hearing. Goliath's voice echoed like thunder across the valley, mocking them and calling them cowards. David felt a fire ignite in his heart. "I can fight him," he declared, stepping forward boldly. His brothers looked at him in disbelief. "You're just a boy. You can't fight a giant," Abinadab exclaimed. But David stood firm, his eyes shining with determination. "I may be young, but I have fought off lions and bears to protect my sheep. I can do this." David's bravery caught the attention of King Saul. He approached the king's tent, where Saul was listening to his men talk about the giant. "Your Majesty," David said, "I want to fight Goliath." King Saul looked at David, astonished. "You are just a boy," he replied. "Goliath has been a warrior his entire life. How can you possibly defeat him?" David took a deep breath and told the king about his experiences as a shepherd. "When a lion or a bear attacked my flock, I chased them down and saved my sheep. The same God who saved me from them will save me from this giant." King Saul, seeing the courage and faith in David's eyes, thought for a moment. "Very well," he said, "but you will need armor." King Saul tried to give David his armor, but it was too heavy and cumbersome for him. David struggled to walk in it and finally said, "I cannot wear this. I am not used to it. I'll go with what I know." He chose to use his sling and 5 smooth stones he found by a nearby stream. With a heart full of faith, he felt ready to face the giant. As David walked toward Goliath, the giant laughed loudly, his voice echoing across the valley. "Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks?" he roared. The Israelite soldiers watched in fear, worried for the brave boy. But David stood tall and answered boldly,
"You come at me with a sword and a spear, but I come in the name of the Lord, the God of Israel. Today, the Lord will deliver you into my hands."
David took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. He loaded one of the smooth stones into his sling and began to spin it around his head. With all his might, he let the stone fly through the air. It soared straight toward Goliath, striking him right in the forehead. The giant stumbled backward, his eyes wide with shock. With a loud thud, Goliath fell to the ground. The Israelite soldiers erupted in cheers, their fear replaced with joy and amazement. David had done what no one thought possible. He had defeated the mighty giant with just a stone and his faith. The Israelites rushed forward, filled with excitement. They celebrated David as their hero. David had shown everyone that bravery and faith could overcome even the greatest challenges. As the crowd cheered, David felt a mixture of joy and humility.
Thank you for watching. What did you learn from this story? Let's know in the comment section. Please subscribe, like and share.
One day, God spoke to a man named Jonah. God told Jonah to go to the great city of Nineveh to warn the people to stop doing wrong.
Jonah, go to the great city of Nineveh and tell them to stop their wicked ways, or I will punish them.
Jonah decided to run away from God and sailed in the opposite direction to a faraway city called Tarshish. But God sent a great storm. The wind roared and the waves crashed. The ship was about to break apart, and the sailors shouted,
"Everyone, pray to your gods. We must do something, or we'll sink."
Jonah was deep asleep, not knowing what was happening, and the sailors said to him,
"Wake up. How can you sleep? Pray to your God, and maybe he will save us."
Jonah knew that he had disobeyed God.
"This storm is my fault. I am running away from the Lord. If you throw me into the sea, the storm will stop."
The only way to stop the storm was to throw him into the sea. But God did not let Jonah drown. Instead, he sent a great fish to swallow Jonah. And Jonah stayed inside the belly of the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. Inside the fish, Jonah prayed to God and asked for forgiveness.
"Lord, I am sorry for running away. I will do what you asked. Please save me."
He promised to obey God from now on. After 3 days, the fish spat Jonah out onto dry land. Jonah was safe. This time, Jonah obeyed God and went to Nineveh. He warned the people, and they listened. God showed mercy to the people of Nineveh, and they were saved. Jonah learned that God's love and mercy are for everyone. Even when we make mistakes, God is always ready to forgive us if we turn back to Him.
Thank you for watching. What did you learn from this story? Let's know in the comment section. Please subscribe, like and share.
The story begins in the town of Nazareth in Galilee, where Mary, a young virgin, is visited by the angel Gabriel.
"You are favored by the Lord. The Lord is with you. Don't be afraid, Mary. You have found favor with God. You will become pregnant, give birth to a son, and his name shall be called Jesus. He will be a great man and will be called the Son of the Most High. The Lord God will give him the throne of his ancestor David. Your son will be king of Jacob's people forever, and his kingdom will never end."
Mary asked the angel,
"How can this be, knowing that I'm a virgin?"
The angel answered her,
"The Holy Spirit will come to you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. Therefore, the holy child developing inside you will be called the Son of God."
Gabriel also tells Mary that her cousin Elizabeth, who was thought to be barren, is 6 months pregnant with a child who will be called John, later known as John the Baptist. Mary, though initially confused and troubled by the angel's message, accepts God's will with humility and faith, saying,
Here am I, the servant of the Lord, let it be with me according to your word.
Joseph, who is engaged to Mary, learns that she is pregnant. He knows that he is not the father and initially plans to divorce her quietly to avoid exposing her to public disgrace or potential stoning under Jewish law. However, an angel of the Lord appears to Joseph in a dream and explains that Mary's pregnancy is a divine miracle, that the child she carries is the Messiah, and that he should take her as his wife. The angel also tells him that the child is to be named Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins. Joseph obeys the angel's command, takes Mary into his home, and does not have relations with her until after the birth of Jesus. At this time, the Roman Emperor Caesar Augustus decrees that a census be taken of the entire Roman world. Everyone is required to return to their ancestral hometowns to register. Joseph, who is of the lineage of King David, travels with Mary from Nazareth in Galilee to Bethlehem in Judea, because Bethlehem is the city of David. Since Mary is heavily pregnant, this journey would have been difficult and uncomfortable for her. When Mary and Joseph arrive in Bethlehem, they find that there is no room for them at the inn due to the influx of people for the census. Mary gives birth to her son in a humble setting, in a stable used for animals, and places him in a manger, a feeding trough, because there is no crib for him. This humble and lowly birth, away from the pomp and luxury of a royal setting, marks the beginning of Jesus' earthly life. On the night of Jesus' birth, an angel of the Lord appears to a group of shepherds who are watching over their flocks in the fields outside Bethlehem. The angel tells them that a Savior has been born, the Messiah, and gives them a sign. They will find the baby wrapped in swaddling clothes and lying in a manger. Suddenly, a host of angels appears, praising God and declaring, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace to those on whom his favor rests." The shepherds, filled with awe, hurry to Bethlehem and find Mary, Joseph, and the newborn Jesus just as the angel had said. They spread the word about what they had seen and heard, and all who heard their story were amazed. On the 8th day after Jesus' birth, as was the custom in Jewish law, he is circumcised and officially named. He is given the name Jesus, as the angel had instructed Mary and Joseph. After the required days of purification, Mary and Joseph bring Jesus to the temple in Jerusalem to present him to the Lord, as it is written in the law of Moses. While there, they meet Simeon, a righteous and devout man who had been promised by the Holy Spirit that he would not die before seeing the Messiah. Simeon takes Jesus in his arms and praises God, saying,
"Sovereign Lord, as you have promised, you may now dismiss your servant in peace. For my eyes have seen your salvation, which you have prepared in the sight of all nations, a light for revelation to the Gentiles, and the glory of your people Israel."
Also prophesies that Jesus will be a light to the Gentiles and that he will bring division. Many will rise and fall because of him. Simeon then tells Mary that a sword will pierce her soul as well, foreshadowing the pain she will experience at the cross. The prophetess Anna, an elderly widow who had worshipped at the temple night and day, also comes forward. She gives thanks to God and speaks about the child to all who were looking forward to the redemption of Jerusalem. Sometime after Jesus' birth, wise men, magi, from the east arrive in Jerusalem. They have seen a star that signifies the birth of a king and have come to worship him. They ask King Herod where the king of the Jews has been born, as they have come to offer him gifts. Herod, troubled by the news of a potential rival king, secretly calls the Magi and asks them to find the child and report back to him under the pretense of wanting to worship him as well. The Magi follow the star, which leads them to the house where Mary and Jesus are staying. They bow down and worship him, presenting gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, which are traditional offerings for a king, a priest, and one who will suffer, respectively. Warned in a dream not to return to Herod, the Magi depart for their country by another route. After the visit of the Magi, an angel appears to Joseph in a dream, telling him to flee to Egypt with Mary and Jesus because King Herod intends to kill the child. Joseph obeys and takes his family to Egypt, where they remain until after Herod's death. When Herod realizes he has been deceived by the Magi, he orders the massacre of all male children under the age of 2 in Bethlehem, hoping to kill the newborn king. This tragic event, known as the Massacre of the Innocents, fulfills a prophecy from the book of Jeremiah that says,
In Ramah, weeping and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children and refusing to be comforted, because they are no more.
After Herod's death, an angel tells Joseph in a dream that it is safe to return to Israel. However, because Herod's son Archelaus is now ruling in Judea, Joseph is afraid to go back there. Instead, he takes Mary and Jesus to the region of Galilee and settles in the town of Nazareth, fulfilling another prophecy that Jesus would be called a Nazarene. Thus, the birth of Jesus, while marked by humble circumstances, is a fulfillment of Old Testament prophecies and signals the arrival of the long-awaited Messiah. His birth is surrounded by divine signs, visits from shepherds and wise men, and a series of miraculous events that reveal him as the Savior of the world. These events set the stage for his mission to bring salvation to all people.
Thank you for watching. What did you learn from this story? Let's know in the comment section. Please subscribe, like and share.
It was early spring in the town of Nazareth, and the air was filled with the excitement of preparation. The Passover festival was near, and families from all over Israel were preparing for the long journey to Jerusalem. Among the travelers were Mary, Joseph, and their 12-year-old son, Jesus. This year was particularly special, as Jesus had grown into a young boy, now just at the edge of manhood, and he was old enough to fully understand the importance of the pilgrimage. Joseph gathered his tools, and Mary packed provisions for the trip. The journey to Jerusalem would be long and tiring, but it was a time of great celebration for the Jewish people. It was a time to remember how God had freed the Israelites from slavery in Egypt and brought them into the Promised Land. Families would offer sacrifices, share meals, and recount the stories of God's faithfulness. The road to Jerusalem was filled with people, and many families traveled together in large groups for safety and companionship. Mary and Joseph, though mindful of their son, let him travel with the extended family. Jesus, being a boy now, walked with his cousins and friends, laughing and talking as they made their way south to the great city. Mary and Joseph likely spoke quietly along the way, discussing the significance of the upcoming festival and the rituals that would take place at the temple. Jesus, eager to participate in these sacred rites, asked questions about the history of the Passover and what each tradition meant. When they finally reached Jerusalem, the city was teeming with people. The sound of prayers, the bleating of sacrificial animals, and the bustling of pilgrims filled the streets. The city was alive with the spirit of the holiday. Mary and Joseph, along with Jesus, would have made their way to the temple, where they would offer their sacrifices and join with others in prayer. There, Jesus would have witnessed the great rituals of the Passover celebration, the slaughter of the lambs, and the singing of the psalms. For a young boy, it must have been a moment of awe, a chance to experience firsthand the power and holiness of the God his family worshipped. The week passed quickly in the joy of the festival, and when it was time to leave, Mary and Joseph began the journey back to Nazareth. It was a long, dusty road, and as the family packed up and prepared to go, they assumed that Jesus was with the rest of the caravan. It was common for children to travel with other relatives, and so they set off without worry. But after a day's journey, as they made camp for the night, they realized something was wrong. They had not seen Jesus for hours, and when they asked around, they found that he was nowhere to be found. Panic swept over Mary and Joseph. Their hearts raced as they realized that they had left Jerusalem without their son. They immediately turned around and made their way back to the city, retracing their steps through the familiar roads, calling out his name as they searched. The city was quieter now, with the festival over and many people already gone, but the search felt endless. Day after day they looked for him, and with each passing hour, the worry grew heavier. Finally, after 3 days of frantic searching, they found Jesus sitting in the temple. But he was not lost, nor was he frightened. Instead, he was calmly sitting among the teachers of the law, the scribes and religious scholars who spent their days studying and teaching the scriptures. Jesus, even at his young age, had been asking them questions and speaking to them about the meaning of the scriptures. The teachers, amazed at his understanding, were captivated by the depth of his insight. It was clear that this young boy was no ordinary child. Mary and Joseph, though filled with relief at finally finding him, were also confused and perhaps a little frustrated. Mary approached her son with a mixture of worry and tenderness in her voice. "Son, why have you treated us like this?" she asked, her voice filled with both concern and a touch of rebuke. "Your father and I have been anxiously searching for you." Jesus looked up at his mother with calm eyes, and without hesitation, he replied,
"Why were you searching for me? Didn't you know I had to be in my Father's house?"
His words, though simple, carried a weight of meaning. Mary and Joseph, still trying to understand, exchanged looks of uncertainty. They did not fully grasp what Jesus meant by "in my Father's house," but they knew it had something to do with his unique relationship with God. Even at this early age, Jesus seemed aware of his divine calling. Though Mary and Joseph did not completely understand his words, they knew deep in their hearts that something extraordinary was unfolding. As they left the temple and began their journey home, they were no longer the same. Mary pondered these events in her heart, reflecting on the mystery of her son and the things he had said. Jesus, meanwhile, continued on the path of growing in wisdom and grace. As they returned to Nazareth, life slowly returned to normal. Jesus, now more aware of his special connection with God, returned to the quiet rhythms of village life. He helped Joseph with his work as a carpenter, learning the trade and continuing to grow in stature. But those who knew him in Nazareth saw something different in him, a quiet wisdom, a depth that set him apart from other boys his age. Jesus did not speak much of what had happened in Jerusalem, but his life, though hidden, was preparing him for the great work ahead. In the years that followed, the quiet life of Nazareth continued, and Jesus grew physically and spiritually. He learned, he prayed, and he studied the scriptures. He grew in favor with both God and man, and though his full mission had not yet begun, it was clear to those who watched him that he was destined for something greater. The incident in the temple, though brief, marked a turning point in Jesus' life. At age 12, he had begun to understand his unique role in God's plan, and though he remained with Mary and Joseph, living humbly in Nazareth, his heart was already aligned with his Heavenly Father's will. This was just the beginning of a journey that would take him far beyond the small town of Nazareth, and the world would soon know the full extent of the divine mission that had been entrusted to him.
Thank you for watching. What did you learn from this story? Let's know in the comment section. Please subscribe, like and share.